Welcome back to another video. I'm currently working on the interior of my house, making it look like all nice and cozy. But while I play this game Minecraft, the gaming industry is currently under the most aggressive, coordinated government attack that we have ever seen. Like 10 years ago, the internet was like a fundamentally different place. You could boot up a game, like pick a random username, and exist entirely off the grid. But for the last 2 years, we have watched massive tech companies completely cave to the modern surveillance state, dismantling that freedom piece by piece. We watched Discord quietly implement massive data harvesting tools and turn a blind eye as private user data was repeatedly exposed. We watched Roblox completely destroy the soul of its platform by forcing all the age ratings, all the dynamic heads, all sorts of stuff just to appease global regulators and corporate investors. It was a mess. We even watched the massive console giants like PlayStation and Xbox start building the baseline architecture for permanent online tracking. It felt like the entire concept of gaming anonymity was dead. The governments of the world, specifically in the UK and the US, realized that the gaming ecosystem was the last remaining pocket of the open internet where users could exist without a permanent government-backed digital footprint. And they absolutely hated it. So they drafted massive sweeping legislation under the guise of online safety and protecting the children to force every single tech company to build invasive third-party age verification backdoors directly into their software. And almost every single tech CEO traded your privacy for a regulatory green light. But there's one massive, untouchable fortress sitting in the middle of the internet that simply said no. Today we're talking about Valve, the creators of Steam, and how they just orchestrated what might be the most massive, beautiful rejection of global government overreach in the history of the internet. We're going to look at the coordinated multi-hundred-million-dollar lawsuits being levied and weaponized to bankrupt them, why governments are terrified of a private tech giant they cannot control, and how Gabe Newell just permanently saved PC gaming from the digital ID surveillance state. To understand the absolute scale of this victory, you have to look at the exact weapons the government is currently using to try and break Valve. The regulators in the United Kingdom realized that they could just not simply order Steam to install spyware. That's not going to work. Valve is a privately held company. They do not have public shareholders to appease. They do not have a board of corporate investors that are demanding infinite sanitized growth. And they do not rely on selling advertisement data to survive. They simply sell video games to gamers and take a cut. Because of this absolute financial independence, Valve is essentially immune to the standard corporate blackmail that governments use to force tech giants and tech corporations into compliance. So the government decided to hit them where it hurts the most, the treasury. We are currently watching the UK Competition Appeal Tribunal greenlight an absolutely massive historic class action lawsuit demanding over £656 million, or I believe around, $840 million US dollars from Valve. On the surface, they're claiming that this massive lawsuit is about Steam's standard 30% revenue cut and their pricing parity rules. They're trying to frame Valve as a tyrannical monopoly that financially hurts consumers. But if you actually look at the timing of this unprecedented legal attack, the reality becomes glaringly obvious. Companies like Apple, Google, Sony, and Microsoft all take the exact same 30% cut. The government is laser focused on launching this massive, coordinated strike against Valve. They are actively trying to shatter Steam's core business model. They want to drain the war chest, you could say, of the only independent gaming platform left on Earth. And as if an $800 million hit wasn't enough, they are coordinating these attacks with other massive regulatory bodies. Just days ago, massive music copyright groups filed concurrent lawsuits against Steam, essentially creating a multi-front legal war that is designed to completely bankrupt the company or force them into a settlement where they finally surrender their autonomy and their independence. The goal is more like a financial payout. The absolute goal is submission. But the attack isn't just coming from Europe. At the exact same time the UK is trying to drain like Valve's bank accounts, the United States government is launching like a massive like coordinated assault on their software like mechanics. Like we are seeing both federal and state regulators in places like I believe New York and Washington drag Valve into court over like Counter-Strike 2 CS2. The government is attempting to classify like the entire CS2 like loot box and skin trade system as an illegal multi-billion dollar like unregulated gambling like ring. Now, regardless how you personally feel about the ethics of like the skins and case unboxing, like that is controversial. Like the legal precedent the government is trying to set here is absolutely terrifying. The federal regulators are not just like asking for like a standard fine, like they're demanding that like Valve either completely halt their entire digital like economy in the United States, or, and this is like the terrifying part, implement mandatory government approved like x-ray scanners and like invasive identity tracking systems to like permanently monitor exactly who is opening these cases and also like where they live. Like they are using the moral panic like surrounding digital gambling as like a Trojan horse to force massive identity verification backdoors directly into the Steam client itself. It is the exact same playbook that they also used to push like client-side scanning on smartphones as well, and age verification on social media platforms. Like they created a massive public panic about online safety, and then they're using that panic to like legally mandate that private companies like install permanent tracking like architecture. Like they also looked at the massive like unmonitored digital economy of Steam, and they saw like a massive like blind spot in their surveillance network. The United States government is trying to force Valve to turn the Steam client into a federal tracking terminal of sorts, and they are threatening to completely dismantle Counter-Strike to make it happen. This brings us to the absolute masterclass of a victory that Valve just pulled off. Every other tech company on earth looked at these massive billion-dollar legal threats and instantly folded. Like I remember Roblox caved and started demanding government IDs to chat. Discord caved and started selling out their user chat logs to third-party safety monitors. But Valve looked at the demands from the UK's Online Safety Act and the United States regulators, and they essentially found the ultimate privacy loophole. The governments demanded that Steam implement strict, verifiable age checking to protect minors, quote unquote. The standard industry response to this demand is to partner with massive third-party data brokers, companies that force you to hold your physical driver's license, ID, or even your passport up to your webcam while artificial intelligence scans your biometrical face data and logs it into a permanent, highly vulnerable database. We have seen time and time again that these data brokers get hacked, leaking millions of IDs onto the dark web. But Valve flat out refused to play that game. They told the global regulators that they were not going to subject their massive user base to an invasive third-party biometrical scan. Instead, Valve implemented the most beautifully simple zero data workaround in the history of tech. To verify age in these strictly regulated regions, Valve simply runs a localized $0 authorized check against the user's payment method. There's no AI, no facial scanning, no unloading sensitive government documents to a random server, no sharing your private data with third-party tracking sites. Valve literally stated on the record that they designed their system specifically to protect the maximum degree of the user's privacy. They technically complied with the law, but they did it in a way that completely bypassed the government's true goal of establishing a permanent trackable digital footprint for every single PC gamer. Valve, they found a legal loophole, protected their users from massive data breaches, and also effectively slammed the door in the face of the global surveillance state. This is exactly why PC gaming is the last true bastion of the open internet, you could say. When you have a massive privately owned platform that actually respects its user base, the corporate extortion tactics completely fall apart. The governments of the world are absolutely fuming right now, probably, because Valve proved that you do not need to build a massive dystopian surveillance apparatus just to run a safe, functional digital platform. Many people in the gaming community are finally waking up to the reality of this regulatory war and what's happening to Steam. We're watching the complete collapse of the narrative that invasive data collection is a necessary evil. Gabe Newell and the team at Valve just drew like a massive line in the sand, and they showed the entire tech industry that you can actually fight back against these like unconstitutional digital ID minutes and win. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Like, I'm sure you guys will use Steam. Like, I use Steam personally. Like, do you think that Valve can actually hold out against like these legal threats, or will they eventually cave at some point? That could maybe happen. So let me know in the comments, and yeah, have a good day, and I'll see you next time.